What's up, Vivers? I'm super excited to bring you this beginner's guide on Tetra, the brand new hunter hitting the breach today. Tetra, described as a tough stone shaping bruiser, feels very much to me like an earthbending Battlemage. She's extremely fun, seems like she is going to be very strong. So my goal for this video is to take you from no knowledge of this hunter to being able to play her at somewhat of a decent level your very first time. And we're going to do that mainly by talking through her abilities, their mechanics, exactly how they work, and discussing how we can combo them together effectively in combat. We'll close it out with a brief discussion of build options from the Armory at the end. So if I had to describe Tetra's role, she feels like this sort of hybrid battle mage where she can hold space very well. She can play around the terrain she creates. Along with that sort of controller aspect, she also has very strong engage with her R&B. A huge part of the kit is going to revolve around Volcano Crusher. Oh yeah, this not only deals a ton of damage and stuns, it also dunks and it also resets itself on knocks. The dunk combined with her ability to create terrain over Abyss with her ultimate is going to make her a very powerful Abyss fighter as well. She's potentially going to be one of the best ledge guarders in the game, with the combination of her punch being able to force people off of ledges and her dunk being able to charge up while she's punching. On top of that, she has very nice mobility with some really feel-good Schmovement Tech with the LMB glider. When you start to take into consideration relics in the Armory, she has some insane mobility over her walls. And she also has some really kind of feel-good animation canceling that lets her combo her abilities together simultaneously. That leads to like very deep feeling like Earthbender gameplay. All in all, in the day that I've had to test her in the early access build, she has been very fun to play. Potential of being the new main, and definitely will be playing Tetra on stream today and for the next several days at least. If you want to come by, hang out, ask any questions, that's twitch.tv/Zikric with a 0 because I was late to the party. GG. With that, I hope you're vibing. Let's dive in. All right, let's start things off taking a look at our primary fire left mouse button, Quake Punch. This is basically a two-part ability. It says tap to throw a boulder, hold and release to punch forward, launching enemies. Enemies punched into a wall are stunned. So if we take a look, if we just press it, we get this nice little ranged attack. One of the coolest things about the tap is we're basically going to be able to combo it as we're doing other abilities. So then the hold is going to look like this. And as you can see, it's actually a really fun ability. So we can do it on the ground and it has pretty good, momentum even just on the ground. If we jump in the air, it's going to give us even a little more momentum, right? We're going to take a look at the details of this, but we can even catch the momentum in our glider. So not only can you use this for like map traversal, you can also use it to sort of move around combat, dodging enemy shots. So there's this timing to it where if you try to press it too soon, it won't work. See, I'm trying to hold right here. I added this little input UI. I hope you guys like it. You can sort of see what I'm doing now on my controls. So the timing is like maybe like this. That was too soon. Too soon. You want to get used to this timing, and you can see I'm not putting in any directional input, so this is just like the native impulse, right? If I actually add a little movement to it. But the idea of using this in combat, like a strike shooting you, and you're using it like as she's shooting to dodge attacks or as you need, sort of like the Jin LMB or now the Wukong LMB, she is going to have a little bit of that. But the charge slows you down as you start to wind it up. You see the move slow over here. As I start to, charge up, it drops my move speed. So you don't want to use it all the time, but just in like specific situations where you're trying to dodge something, it definitely can be used like navigating the battlefield to like dodge abilities and attacks. So the bottom part, the big part right here, rocks generated by Rockwave or Tetraform can also be launched this way. Rocks punch this way explode, shredding armor. So we can see if I summon my wall, my Q, my terrain here, and I press my tap, it's going to turn it into a fireball. If I punch it, it's going to do basically the same thing. Yeah, we can see they both shred armor. So there's the ranged one. There's the punched one, and they're both going to shred armor. So there's really like a crazy amount of value in this because your ability to hold space, like not only can you threaten people away from you with your punch, you can threaten fireballs with this, and you can do it at like a really long range. We can see if I shoot it from way back here. And this is going to be a big deal. Like basically the range you're going to have at holding space when you have your wall up using your tap to shoot fireballs that are doing good damage and shredding armor and counting as abilities, by the way, for proccing items and such. You're also often going to be like playing around them to like block skill shots and stuff like that, and you can also just blast people that are on the other side of it with a huge punch, and that is very satisfying. Using the punch to stun into walls is going to be like a really big deal, and so constantly looking for an angle to try to get someone between you and a wall or any kind of terrain. By the way, you can create your own terrain. So if someone is up on you, you can make a wall behind them and blast them into it. Taking a closer look at the tap real quick, we can see there's this little move speed slow when we do tap, very similar to a lot of ranged attacks in the game, right? So just keep that in mind. If you are running and you're auto attacking, you're gonna be losing a little bit of speed on your way out. And like I mentioned at the beginning, if you are holding your right mouse button, which we're about to get to, and you just start tapping LMB, you'll basically animation cancel the big kind of upward slam with just your rock throw, right? And so we can kind of maximize our DPS by constantly throwing rocks while we're doing our RMB charge. The other crazy thing we can do is also punch while we are charging our LMB. And if we time it right, we can punch at basically the exact same time. And so if you have someone on a wall angle, you will be able to blast them into the wall and guarantee the sweet spot. Additionally, we can use this to super dunk, which we're going to talk about in a bit. The other important thing to note about the punch is we can actually use our Q, our Rockwave, our wall, while we're in the punch animation as well. And so at any point, like during a punch, if you need your Q for some reason, either behind someone to punch them into that wall, or if someone's running away and you need, you know, a boulder to fly after them and shred armor, you can basically mid punch, just Q, and you will be able to blast. So when you're actually fighting people, like comboing these abilities, it's felt pretty good to me to basically punch and then try to weave like 1 or 2 long range autos and then like punch again. And obviously this is going to change depending on what kind of hunter you're fighting, but like especially hunters that are kind of up on you, just giving them a punch, and then when they're in that knockback, it like makes it a lot easier to hit your first LMB after you tap them back, right? And if they keep running away, you can keep sniping them and look for some stuff like this, or if they come back towards you, you can look for another punch into more LMBs. In that way, I think she's going to be pretty good at healing for herself, because she kind of has just like, it's like a mini bishop punch basically. Okay, now let's take a quick look at the details of the LMB Schmovement Tech here, right? So basically, they've already anticipated that this is going to happen, so I think this will stay in the game, because we can see there is a dampener on it. So as I keep doing it, I get slower and slower. And if I don't wait to punch here, like if I don't stay on the ground, we can see I literally have 0 momentum. I'm like fully dampened here, and I literally can't even do it anymore, right? However, there is like a pretty reasonable kind of, you know, middle ground where we can reset the dampen fairly quickly while still using a little bit of movement. So if we're doing our normal movement here, which is basically what I'm doing, is you see when I jump and I'm holding LMB, it gives me this forward momentum, right? I'm basically trying to catch that momentum in my glider. So you can see on my little inputs here, as soon as I release the LMB charge, I pull out my glider and I try to catch like the max point of that momentum in the glide. It's pretty close, like to right after. And then basically as that's timing out, like as you feel the speed kind of slowing down to normal, you want to just let your glider go, land on the ground, jump up again as you're charging your next punch, right? So it's basically like let your glider go, start your punch charge, and as you're landing, just press spacebar to jump. And if you chain that together with a little bit of practice, you're gonna get this nice feeling, kind of skater girl, you know, sliding along. It's actually really fun. And you can do it for about 5 or 6. You can see here is when I'm really starting to slow down. So basically what we can do at that point is a little combo on the ground to basically reset the dampen. So from what I can figure out, the way it works is anytime you punch in the air, the dampener is applied, but when you punch on the ground, it doesn't count toward the dampener, okay? So you can sort of infinitely punch. If you're never punching in the air, you can see I never really stop gaining momentum if I'm just punching forward on the ground, right? So there's no dampen when you're just punching on the ground. So basically what we can do then is when we are at this end point where it's starting to get dampened, we can basically convert to a ground punch and bunny hop the end of it. And if we do this 3 times and we do it right, by that point the dampener will be reset and we can be right back into our glide. And we can do this another 5 or 6 times until we start to feel the dampen. And we ground punch jump, ground punch jump, ground punch jump, dampener reset. So this, without ever using a dash, is like a really reliable way to move. Ow. All right, now let's move on to her right mouse button. This is her bread and butter, her RMB Volcano Crusher. This is a classic JMO tooltip. We're gonna go one at a time here. So it says hold to charge, then release for a powerful slam. So we see that looks like this. Boom. If I tap it, looks like that. If I hold it a little bit, Looks like that. Enemies hit in the center are stunned. So we can see when I charge it up, there's this sweet spot in the middle. That is basically the stun zone. That is also the dunk zone. We can see over the abyss, they are dunked. So anytime you are going for your R&B, you're almost always, there's really no reason not to ever be trying to hit the sweet spot in the middle. If you do end up missing, the outer ring will still give you your shield if you connected it and you have it upgraded, and it will still also slow and deal a bit of damage. However, it's not going to be nearly as much as the big juicy spot in the middle. So now it says jump while charging this ability to leap forward. Okay, it has this built-in dash by using spacebar. You have to jump. So if you use this ability while you're on the ground, you can jump and it will carry you pretty dang far forward. And we can see I can jump basically any time during the charge animation, right? Even at like the very, very end if I need a little extra distance. And then it says holding longer increases damage, stun duration, and sweet spot size. So we can see the sweet spot size growing a bit. The damage is going to be increased the longer we hold it, and the stun duration is going to be longer the longer we hold it. It then says resets when you knock or kill an enemy with it. So anytime you get a dunk with this, or if you get the killing blow on someone on land with it, just slamming them down, whether in the sweet spot or not, as long as the damage from this is what killed them, this will get reset. And then we can see, finally, launches rocks generated by Rockwave or Tetraform on impact. So these are our walls, our Q, as well as our ultimate, which both basically create the same type of walls we can interact with. The ult is just bigger and creates terrain under it. We are going to be able to blast fireballs out with our R&B, and we don't even have to charge it, right? We can just even do a tap and it's going to turn them into fireballs. We're going to get into some combos with this, but the same way you can cast your Rockwave during your punch like I was talking about, you can do the same thing during your R&B, where even if you insta tap it, you can like wall and basically fully animation cancel the R&B, and you can even turn that into autos right after. Okay, so in my opinion, the coolest thing about the R&B is the fact that you can punch during it. And so you can do basically what I've been calling a super dunk, which is essentially combining your punch momentum with your jump dunk momentum to get extra far. And not only do you get extra distance, you also gain the ability to maneuver it better. So watch, if I just jump dunk, I can only kind of turn so far, right? My yaw is kind of locked. However, if I super dunk, I have a lot more kind of agency in where I'm turning it. Not only do I go a bit further, I also can basically kind of pivot it and use it to guarantee a little more sweet spot angle. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm pressing R&B, spacebar, and LMB all at the same time. And so you can do it basically together like this. But if you're trying to just, you know, make sure you do it in the proper order, like the keystrokes, you want it to be basically right mouse button, then space, then hold LMB. And you can just tap space. You don't have to hold space. But I just end up holding LMB and R&B like this, and just tapping space as soon as I press my R&B down. And you get this really feel good forward dunk. And the same exact way, we can weave our wall in, our Q while we're punching or while we're R&Bing. We can also weave our wall in while we're in the super dunk, because it's just a combination of both of those. So if we do that with proper timing, you can see right there, basically what you'll do is you'll add 2 armor shredding fireballs to your dunk combo. So you can basically entry like pretty dang far, not only with powerful stun and damage, but also with some armor shredding fireballs leading the charge. We're going to take a closer look at all the combos together once we go through the abilities. But basically on the super dunk, we're trying to cast the Q as soon as our punch is about to release, and that'll result in what you saw right there. You punching either 2, sometimes you can get 3 fireballs just in the direction that you are launching. Another really good option is if you have a good stun angle, you hold your Q so that as soon as you get the stun, you create a wall in between you and them, and you can blast them into the wall. And if there's teammates behind them, they will also get destroyed by the fireballs. I didn't realize it was getting dark, guys. I fixed the light. Sorry. And then the other big part about the R&B is, of course, the dunk. And so you're going to have a lot of agency doing this super dunk out over abyss because of the way you can kind of add some extra steering to it and having the extra range. As soon as you get one of those, your dunk is going to reset. The other thing to think about is this has a good bit of downward momentum, we can see. And so you got to be careful, especially if you're trying to dunk low, that the momentum doesn't pull you all the way down to the floor. Now, the thing to consider is that you need to be on ground to utilize this jump, right? If you're already over abyss, you can't press spacebar and jump. there's no way to kind of add movement to it. And so it's gonna, when you're already over Abyss, it's gonna be a bit different in the way you're gonna want to do it. However, you can still combo it with the LMB punch to move it a little bit. So your best bet is going to be if you can be catching some kind of an updraft up and you can hold it, and then you can see you can still hold your LMB charge and kind of pivot it, right? So if you're out here and someone's gliding over here and you go to dunk them, you can still kind of launch it forward a bit, although it's not quite the same, you know, kind of gas you got under this baby. Michael Jordan, you know, grand slam from free throw. And you don't always need to do that, right? Like if someone's close to you, you can very much just jump, you know, without holding the LMB. But if you are doing this version, you're going to want to tap it, right? There's really never a time when you're holding RB where you don't want to either be tapping or holding, because you're kind of just, you know, wasting the ability to do that. If I don't do either of those things, I'm just kind of sitting in this animation, right? But I can completely cancel that animation with the LMB tap or the hold, right? All right, now let's take a look at her dash. The shift landslide. Generate a rock in front of you and dash forward. At the end of the dash, launch the rock forward. So if I press it, basically the same way these rocks kind of are obstacles that will block certain things, you essentially have one of those in front of you when you're dashing. So not only is this a mobility tool, it can also be used to like block certain projectiles, right? You can essentially use it as a kind of like a mini iframe to try to avoid certain instances of damage that can be blocked by terrain. And just like Celeste Wall, I believe if it takes enough damage, it can actually break before you even turn it into a fireball. But they're pretty beefy, I think, so it's going to be hard to do that. If you do reach the end of the range with it, it's going to turn into a fireball and shoot forward. So this is a good defensive tool to kind of use for the wall to protect yourself and like kite backward as you're blasting them, right? It also is a pretty good chase tool if you're looking to just get the final hit on someone, right? It has a little bit of armor shred. It's not quite as much armor shred as these guys, but it still chips a good bit of armor. And so if you're chasing someone with like 1 bar armor left, if you hit them with this rock, they're going to not only take the normal slow from taking damage, if you break their armor, they're going to get extra slowed. So it also can be used as a pretty good chase tool as well. So you can actually LMB while you're shifting as well. So if you are, you know, shifting forward, you can follow it up with a punch into some autos. You can also just do the tap, right? So you can be kind of adding some extra autos, you know, into your burst if you're actually trying to use this as damage instead of getting away. And you also can do your RMB charge in this, but you kind of have a built-in dash already in your RMB charge if you jump. And we can actually also add the dash into the super dunk if we want. And so we don't always have to do this, but if we wanted to get a max range super dunk, basically what we would do is shift before the whole thing, like this. And you basically want to start the normal super dunk, this. You want to start that like right at the end of your shift, right? So if I shift forward, like kind of right when the shift is ending, I can start that combo. Okay, so that's the shift. Now let's take a look at our Q, our special ability, what I have on mouse button 4 here, Rockwave. Raise a wall of 3 rocks in front of you. Punch rocks with Quake Punch to launch them, dealing damage and shredding armor. So we can see if I press Q here, it's going to pull up these 3 rocks, and it's always going to be the same range. Important to know about this one. It's basically always going to be this kind of same exact distance in front of you, no matter where you're aiming, and it's fairly close, right? But it's far away enough that if someone's right up in your grill, you can spawn these right behind them and just blast them into it. The other really important thing to note is you can't do this, like she just said, over Abyss. You actually have to be basically landed. So we can see can only be cast over ground. Allies can hop over friendly Tetra walls by jumping against them. So if I spawn them again, you can see if I do a little hop up, it's going to actually bump me up. So it's this actually nice little kind of upward momentum. So not only can you do this, but allies can do this. So it should prevent most ally griefing, where if you spawn Rockwells and they're kind of trapped, they should be able to just jump and get over them, hopefully. We can also use this with our shift for a little bit of movement if we want to get like up over, you know, a wall or something like that. If you have Grabby the Squid, you can do some absolutely bonkers stuff with the walls, which we'll take a look at in the relic section. So the coolest thing probably about Rockwave is the way we can weave it with other abilities. So you don't have to like Rockwave and then punch. You can actually just Rockwave while you're punching, right? And sort of do it insta. So the fact that it can be sort of cast like while you're casting, basically everything besides your shift, which you don't ever really need to cast it while you're casting your shift anyways. Makes it like very, very strong. But same thing with the R&B, right? Where we can throw it out basically any time during this, right? We can do it at the very end. We can do it, you know, at the beginning. So to do the burst cast of this, where we basically just want to turn the whole thing into fireballs as quickly as possible, we basically do the little combo I showed with the R&B, where all you're going to do is tap R&B and then instantly wall. And it's basically going to instantly shoot all three, and it's going to let the wall animation cancel the R&B animation. And so you're basically right back into doing stuff. So if you are going to do this, you're often going to want to go right into like LMB taps or an LMB hold, right? Something like this or like this. And also these giant fireballs are pretty good at like spiking people out over Abyss. They're like a really threatening amount of damage. If you catch someone with any amount of glider heat, the odds that it spikes is pretty high. And so you can also do this if you're ledge guarding. You can do the insta thing like this just to create, you know, a bunch of fireballs people have to play around. The other thing that's going to be really good about Rockwave is the fact that we can use it to block, you know, kind of choke points. So if someone's chasing us through some kind of choke point, we can actually, you know, kind of block their path and use that, you know, to buy some time, get away. Rockwave's going to be really good for like blocking enemy attacks. So like any kind of projectile that can be blocked by terrain, you're going to be able to block by these rock walls. So not only is it going to have this kind of offensive capability of blasting with fireballs, it's also going to have the ability to protect you. And so you can very much play around your rock wall, right? If a Shrike is shooting at you, if a Ghost is shooting at you, if a Jinn or Brawl is trying to get up on you before they are, there's all kinds of things you can do, you know, to try to like stop people from getting on top of you. And once you have this up, you can sort of play around it. You don't have to instantly turn this into fireballs. You can keep it as terrain and force the enemy to try to knock it down. And when it's about to go down, then you can blast it, right? Or something like that. It's also just going to be really good in general for like range damage, right? Where you can literally just throw it up and use it for 3 ranged fireballs. So you can kind of think about this ability in a lot of ways, where you can use it in kind of the combos we were talking about. You can use it as a defensive, or you can use it as like a range kind of sniping ability. If you are kind of using it in this way, my recommendation is like if you're trying to shoot in a certain direction, you can basically summon them. And if you walk, you know, if you kind of strafe along a direction, you can basically be hitting them all kind of in the same trajectory, right? Where if I'm standing like this, that one goes that way, that one goes that way, that one goes that way. But if I'm kind of like walking along my wall here, they kind of all go in the same spot, right? I think getting good at using the Rockwave, you know, to reactionarily block shots and then turn it into DPS, use it, you know, to play around is going to really be, you know, kind of a deep, like high skill expression aspect of Tetra. It's going to be really cool. The final thing with Rockwave is using it in combo with your R&B, your Volcano Crusher, where if you do get a slam and it stuns them, you can rock wall behind them into a punch and just blast them into it and blast fireballs back like into their teammates or other enemies. And I also showed the way you can use it with the Super Dunk, right? Where if we're doing this thing, I can basically press my Rockwave right as my punch is about to go, and it will add 2 fireballs, 3 fireballs if you get it kind of perfectly lined up into the beginning of your slam. Okay, so that's the Rockwave. Now let's take a look at the daddy version of that Tetraform. Tap to create a giant wall of rocks. Casting this over Abyss will also create temporary terrain. Hold and drag to position the wall at your desired angle. And this is basically going to be a mega version of our wall we were just looking at. And they behave the same way, where if we tap them, they turn into a fireball. If we hold punch them, they turn into a fireball. And we can also R&B blast them into fireballs, right? The main difference is it can be cast over Abyss. And as you saw right there, it is going to create terrain. So you can very much create temporary terrain to play off of. And remember, if you jump on one of these, just like your other one, you can kind of bounce up a little bit, right? You and allies. So we can see when I go to cast this, it's a pretty long range, right? But if I hold R, that's about max range where this little circle is at from where I'm at right here. And then you can see if I'm holding R, you can kind of drag the indicator and cast the wall the direction you want. So it doesn't matter how kind of far in you are, because it's always going to go the same distance out, but this is kind of just showing its direction, right? So if I was wanting to cast a wall like this with terrain, you know, I'd kind of swivel quickly and let it go, and then it would give us a full wall. And we'll kind of hang out here. It lasts a pretty decently long time, not a crazy long time, but a pretty, you know, good amount. And there's going to be all kinds of use cases for this thing. It's actually a pretty crazy ultimate, and there's going to be a lot of ways that we're going to be able to use it effectively, I think. I think one of the obvious ways and one of the cool ways they show in the trailer, you can cast it pretty far away. So if we cast it max range, then we auto it, we can actually get fireballs pretty dang far, right? And so just using our ultimate to like ranged cleave into team fights and using that same kind of concept I was talking about earlier, where if you do, you know, spawn the wall, if you're kind of like walking along it in a direction, you can kind of shoot your fireballs all in, you know, the same kind of spot, right? The other thing to keep in mind is this is going to apply a slow to nearby enemies for a brief duration. So that's the other difference between these rocks and the rocks from Rockwave, is that basically these are going to give enemies a slow. You can cast it over Abyss. Otherwise, it behaves pretty dang similar. Another clutch way to use it would be like to split a team fight, right? So like, let's say your team is fighting right and you see a third party coming from the left, like literally just doing this to buy your team some time so you can continue fighting these guys and finish them off. If this is enough to like block them off for even just a couple seconds, you know, I think that is going to be a really good use of it's basically a Mega Celeste wall, right? We're going to talk about relics at the end, but there is a crazy combo with the rock walls and Grabby the Squid where you can get some really nice kind of momentum boost out of it. If you basically grapple the wall, you can get this kind of power jump and you can go pretty dang far, especially with a max length grapple. And that can be used, you know, not only over land, but also, you know, over Abyss. Well, there's an invisible wall here. It would have been a lot cooler if there wasn't. Moving on to our last ability, our passive, which honestly is kind of easy to overlook because it doesn't necessarily like synergize with like the rest of her abilities in like a direct way, but it seems like a very strong passive. So it's called Stonesight. Whenever Tetra sneaks, she senses the vibration of enemies in a cone in front of her, revealing their locations. The size of the detection cone increases the longer you hold sneak. So anytime you press control, we can see this gray line going out. It's basically the, you know, kind of distance of our seismic activity. And you can see from this clip, it basically is just going to give you like sound pings based on enemies. You can see pretty clearly where they're at with the little circle. So her ability to scout enemies and like find where people are at and find fights, I think is going to be very strong. In general, like it's going to be very good for her to be helping her team scout. And like especially if you know you might be in a tough spot, like if you set, or a dangerous spot, if you set up an escape route like this, you know, and you know people are like, you can kind of get out so quickly, right? And you can not only do that, you can do this. You have a lot of kind of movement, you know, across terrain where you can come get a look for your team. If stuff's looking hairy, you know, you can kind of be ready to just get the crap out of there. Okay, so those are all her abilities. Now I want to take just a clearer look at all the kind of combos together here. And so we took a look at some of these as we were looking through all the abilities, but now we're going to show them all together and I'm going to kind of show you the exact inputs so you can kind of know exactly what's in your toolkit as far as utilizing this stuff together. So I think the most important combo to kind of start to figure out is the Superdunk. So it just has crazy sort of amount of initiation and you can do a bunch of different variations of it depending on like the situation and how you're trying to play it. So at its very basic level, the Superdunk starts with our LMB, the dunk ability, right? So the next step is to add the jump, right? And this is just the very basic LMB spacebar. The next step after that is to add the punch, the LMB punch, right? So to do this, we're literally just going to do exactly what we just did. We're just going to hold LMB right after, and we can basically do it all together. And we talked about this, but this is going to let us actually maneuver our slam much more than if we just press spacebar without the punch. If you're just going for this and you don't need the extra momentum of the punch, make sure you are always tapping LMB during this. So while you're doing this, you can cast about 3 autos you see during the actual jump slam. So if you're not going to carry more momentum with the punch, you want to do the same exact thing, just tap 3 times. So back to doing the hold here. This is kind of the go-to for me. The 1, 2, 3 of the R&B space LMB. This, like at its basic level, just feels really good to engage with. If we do engage with this and get the slam and we haven't used our Q, this is a perfect time to Q because the enemy's going to be right here in between us. And then we can then blast them into our wall. They're going to receive the wall stun from getting into a wall, and then this is going to turn into fireballs and cleave anyone behind him. So if you're looking for this entry, boom. And we saw right there, I just found out a new combo by accident. We can also Q immediately at the end of this to turn it into 3 fireballs right away. We can also Q mid-jump if we do it right before we let go of our punch, or right before our punch charge ends. right? So there's a lot of different kind of ways we can weave the Q in. The basics is just the 1, 2, 3 of the RMB space LMB, like that, right? But when we look at adding the wall, now we have the option of stunning them, then punching them into the wall. We have the option of throwing the wall in right at the end here for 3 kind of spread fireballs. And finally, we can do like 2 instant fireballs forward, sometimes 3 if you get it lined up perfectly, where all you are doing there is using your Q right when the punch is ending during the super dunk. Okay, so now you can take all of that, and if you want to do it all at longer range, you can add a shift to the beginning of all of it. So everything we just talked about, if you want to do it from further away, you can just shift and then start the R&B charge into the whole thing, right? So we can shift, wall punch, we can shift, insta wall, right? And we can shift wall midair for more focused fire. And then we can also use the shift just doing the taps instead of the hold for the extra distance, right? So the main reason you would want to do this is if you're trying to add a little extra burst to your combo and you're willing to sacrifice your shift forward. In general, the thing that's really good about this R&B engage is you still have your shift for the way out. And the way her shift works, you have the wall, right? So you can actually protect yourself on the way out and even shoot a bunch of, not a bunch, but a little bit of extra damage back in, right? So that would look like this, which we showed earlier. This is just with the shift where we're just shifting, R&B jumping, and then tapping LMB 3 times. And I even did it a little slow right there. You want to try to tap LMB basically as soon as you press R&B. Okay, so those are like all the variations of the super dunk. The main thing to keep in mind with that is anything with the Q isn't going to work over Abyss. So, you know, the other stuff we were talking about will, but anything involving the extra fireballs with the rock wall, you just can't cast it when you're out here. The final thing I forgot to mention about this is you can also just use it for mobility itself, right? So if you're trying to get away and you have those things on cooldown, you know, just using them like that into this is certainly not a terrible option if the situation calls for it. So then we have a couple just like slam combos. This one's really good for like stunning someone out of something while also like cleaving. So like, let's say like a Shiv is ulting on you or like a Kingpin is about to ult you. You can, even if you do it instantly, that small sweet spot will still stun. So you can basically do this if you R&B and just use your Rockwave, your Q right after. You will basically not only do an instant stun, you'll also do a kind of like AoE kind of cleave, right? So for the right situations, this little combo can be pretty useful, where it's just not only is it a quick little stun on someone on you, it's also kind of like a ranged attack. And you can also just use it like that as a ranged attack, right? If you need an instant 3 fireballs kind of spread like that, you can kind of just use it like that. And then kind of the full bore version of this combo, if you want to just spray a bunch of fireballs right away, is essentially like adding in your ult. So what you're going to want to do is basically press your R and then R&B and then your Q or whatever your Rockwave is bound to. So it's like, and you want to make sure your cursor's close to you so your R spawns close. But it's basically, and you can shoot like 6 fireballs at once like that. The other kind of like combos you want to get used to is just like the timing of her punch. You just want to get used to like moving this way, not only on the ground, but also, you know, this kind of Schmovement Tech we were talking about. You also want to get used to, there's this like lockout period where it's about a second. Like you can see my inputs, I showed it earlier, but it's like, if I try to charge it again too soon, you see I'm holding left click still and it won't let me. That's because I'm pressing it again too soon. So you want to make sure you wait. It's a good like 1, you know, 1. And then also when you're actually fighting, actually punching someone into like 1 or 2 autos feels pretty good, where you can kind of peel them off of you. And then because they're getting knocked back, it's pretty easy to hit that first auto. And then the first auto, whenever a hunter takes damage in this game from an enemy, they get a little slow. So if you hit the first auto, it's a little easier to hit the second auto. So anytime like someone's close to you, hitting them with a punch into like the quick 1-2, I think that's a nice kind of go-to timing. And then if they're closing the gap, you go into another punch. If they're running away, you can keep chasing. So on that same line of thought, you can actually use your punch to kind of force people out over Abyss, and then you can look for a dunk on them. And this actually feels really good to do, and it's going to make her have really strong sort of ledge holding capabilities. Basically because of this, she can not only force people off into Abyss, we can actually charge our R&B while we do this, right? So basically insta someone down into Abyss, by, even if they're on land, by knocking them off like this and then having your charge already ready to go. So as soon as they get kind of knocked out over the edge, they just instantly go down. All right, so that's basically it for the abilities. You can see I've switched sides here so we can take a look at some build options. So keep in mind, I've only had 24 hours to test this against bots, and the armory is fully locked on these early access accounts, so I don't have access to any armory items in game. So the only place I can test armory items is in practice still right here. So we mentioned Grabby the Squid momentum with the walls. I don't think this is essential. It's a cool thing. It is going to give you some crazy, you know, mobility across the map. However, I don't think this is like ultra essential to play Tetra, right? I think it will help. I think it's crazy, but I don't think you need it. If you want to be able to like escape more in solo queue, it certainly will be very helpful, but like you don't need it like a Kingpin does to guarantee your slam. Like you basically have your own built-in, you know, kind of way to move your slam around. But it is super cool, and you probably will find other uses for it besides just, you know, the wall boost like that. It is a very, very cool item. And the other thing to consider is once you do get it to 3-star, it has 2-second cooldown off of terrain, right? And your walls are going to count as terrain. And I mentioned it when we were talking about it, but if you want to guarantee not getting stuck, we can see there's some kind of RNG where you, some good amount of the time, if you hit just the regular wall, you'll just get kind of bumped up or stuck. Sometimes you'll blast through like that. But if you want to guarantee going through cleanly, just do it off one pillar, and that'll basically for sure it. And then same thing with the ulti. You can just kind of clear, you know, 2 real quick. Okay, so Grabby the Squid, definitely going to be a relic option. That's a cool one, but I don't think is essential. What I think is probably going to be essential is going to be the Ardent Songbow. And this thing gets especially crazy as you start up. But basically, this is going to make it so hitting an enemy with a primary attack refunds 1 second of the cooldowns on our abilities. And this is going to be a very cooldown heavy character. Like we're going to basically, because of how much we're playing off of our punch or off of our Volcano Crusher, our like kind of main kill tool and engage tool, we are going to want this up as much as possible. We're going to want our walls up as much as possible to save us for the zoning, for something to play around, to use for range DPS, to use as part of all the combos we talked about. And for the same exact reason, we're going to want the mega version of that, our ult up as much as possible, right? And so we really want as much cooldown reduction as possible. This is basically a unique version of cooldown reduction. The reason this Songbow is so good and why I think this is like BIS on a lot of hunters is basically because it bypasses the cooldown reduction diminishing returns, right? So because it doesn't give you like direct ability haste as a stat, you can basically build, you know, ability haste, like full ability haste, and then have this extra cooldown reduction coming from this Ardent Songbow effect on top without diminishing returns. So for example, if I take Chrono Gauge, so I have 15% cooldown reduction over here on the right. If I take Isochron's Time Staff, which is 22%, 22 plus 15 would be what, 37%, right? But if I buy this, I don't actually have 37%, I have 34%. And that's because the more ability haste you buy, the more diminishing returns you get on it. So if I build any more ability haste items, it's not going to do much for me. However, I can actually build Ardent Songbow, and this gives me direct cooldown reduction that doesn't count as ability haste. So this is a unique effect that's giving me extra seconds off of my cooldowns beyond just the base cooldown being lower from this ability haste. So combining these two things, Ardent Songbow basically lets you sort of bypass the cooldown reduction cap. And especially with a character like Tetra, we are going to be able to proc this quite often. The way both of these count as primary attacks, we're going to be able to be getting a lot of primary attacks through. And once we get this to 2-star, every second that we hit one of these, we're going to get a second off our abilities. So the way I'm thinking about this is I think Ardent Songbow is going to be basically kind of locked in for this first slot, and then we have some options for the second slot, right? I think a full cooldown reduction look like this, where we give ourselves really low base cooldowns and then supplement that with more CDR hitting our primaries with Ardent Songbow. This is going to be a really fun one to play because it's going to be just the maximum amount of slams, the maximum amount of walls, the maximum amount of ults, and you're going to be able to be rotating this stuff very, very quickly. You know, because you basically have sort of the most ability haste and cooldown reduction stacked that you can. I think you could trade this second slot for a couple different options. You could trade it for Grabby the Squid, which we talked about, to do the boost off the wall that we've been looking at. Super cool. Probably going to be some other utility stuff with Grapple. I think we could also put Bungie in the same spot because of the way she is able to create terrain. She is going to give herself things to bungee off of, not only to make walls, but also to pull enemies into her wall, line it up into a punch. Anyone that has a dunk can benefit pretty good from bungee because you can kind of do this. And if someone's out here, you can bungee them and have your dunk being, you know, lined up, ready to go as they get bungeed in right there. We can use it to make a wall, you know, basically anywhere between terrain. We can see there's some kind of wonky punch momentum where I can actually use this. If I have a bungee up, I can punch it if I want to try to go the other way. Even if you had like no walls anywhere, you could do like this and like make your own bungee wall, right? And then like freaking punch into it and do something like this. I don't know. You could do some crazy stuff with bungee. And I also think just because it's kind of broken, that the resonating idol might have some viability if you're looking for an execution like Volcano Crusher focused build where you're essentially kind of avoiding casting your Rockwave unless you absolutely need to. And you're just power slamming with your R&B. It probably will get tuned back, but they've tuned this a couple times. And it used to be called Amplifier, and it's always been pretty dang strong. The main thing I don't like about it is it limits the way you use your kit and that you're trying to only use one ability with it. But if you were trying to do something like a turbo slam build, you know, so that puts it on a 4-second cooldown. And if you were going to do something like this actually with the idol, you probably would be better off just dropping the songbow for time staff, because if you did this, you'd have to you're gonna have to hit a couple autos to get it back. Whereas if you took the time staff, it probably will be up in just like 2 seconds, whether you hit anything or not. 3 seconds. So this could go kind of crazy for the right situation. The main thing here is you need the 2-star idol if you want to use your shift cooldown. So if I use shift with a 1-star, it's going to have the stacks, and that same thing is going to happen if I cast another ability, right? So if I rock wall, it's going to have the stacks. If I ult, it's going to have the stacks, right? So basically if you were running this, it's because you just want to be like turbo power slamming over and over again, just super dunking every 3 seconds. So the last option I'll kind of mention for the secondary slot, which by the way, you could, you know, kind of run all kinds of things here. You could, you know, run stuff besides Longbow. Definitely brand new system. Try what you think is good. And I think a lot of things can work. But I do think Sunweaver, with the way we're kind of weaving our autos and ability damage, could actually be very strong with this hunter as well. So if you're looking for more of like a range DPS look, where you care less about the ability haste coming from time staff, or the, you know, grabby the squid or battle gum interactions, and you just want like more kind of pump, then I think you could throw Sunweaver in this slot. And I think these two together synergize very well on a couple different hunters, but I think she's going to be another one where just the weaving of the way she weaves her primary attack with so much of her abilities, I think she's just going to get a lot of value out of basically any relics or grips that interact with abilities, right? And we can see here on Chrono Gauge, hitting an enemy with ability refunds cooldowns as well. So not only, you know, do you have this Ardent Songbow effect resetting your cooldowns, you also have the cooldowns resetting themselves when you hit them with the Chrono Gauge, right? I will mention one more, actually. I think Essence Reaper also just a very strong one in general for a lot of hunters, but because of the way you're weaving primary attacks, if you're looking to be a little beefier Tetra, if you're looking to add some extra damage, if you're looking to heal a bit off your autos, I think something like this Essence Reaper could also be very, very strong. So that's a perfect time to move on to grips. I think Chrono Gauge is going to be basically essential. I think there is a build where you could drop it. We'll take a look at. So I think, in my opinion, the best grip setup is probably going to end up being Burning Palm Chrono Gauge. That's basically because of how important ability haste is, and because of the fact that anytime we do this and are getting a fireball, our fireballs count as abilities, right? So hitting a fireball is going to proc our Burning Palm burn. It's also going to lower the cooldown on our abilities from our Chrono Gauge. And so the synergy of these two with the amount we're actually connecting these fireballs on people feels really, really good. And I would say the other one that is worth looking at that could be really fun, if you're wanting to lean a little more away from the ability haste side of things, if you're not as worried about cooldown reduction, you could drop your Chrono Glove and you could go for a Frozen Palm, like a full elemental setup. So now we have the fire, we have the ice, and we have the earth. If I could find it. Here it is, Frozen Palm. So abilities apply a slow, 30% slow for 1 second. Abilities apply a burn, max health over seconds, and these both scale up with the star level, right? And so what this is going to allow is anytime we are hitting people with our fireballs, it's going to slow them, so it's easier to hit the next fireball, right? So if we're trying to line people up and do huge damage off of kind of the burst of these fireballs, this is going to be a very strong setup, because every one of these connecting is going to light them on fire and slow them, making it not only easier to hit the next fireball, but also easier to follow up with a super dunk engage into, you know, blasting them. If you like the way Frozen Palm feels over Burning Palm, I think you could absolutely run Frozen Palm with Chrono Gauge. Same way, you know, we were looking at Burning Palm with Chrono Gauge. I think basically any combination of these three is actually going to be really strong. You could run it like this, you could run it like this, you know, or you could run it like this. And I think all three would be really good. Another niche thing you can look at if you're not running the time staff in the second slot and you really want to focus on cooldown reduction while running another relic besides the time staff, you can drop your second grip, keep Chrono Gauge, and just throw a Glove of Haste on a gray one. And this is just going to bring you to 27 CDR without running the time staff. And you still have your little extra effect of Chrono Gauge plus all the cooldown reduction resetting from your Songbow. And this would be, you know, a setup if you're looking for more cooldown reduction and you want to use this second relic slot for something besides the time staff here, right? All right, so taking a look at boots, I think Bloodlust boots are going to be a pretty good look on her. I was trying Rocket High Tops and I just don't feel a huge difference in the dash. Like, we can take a look at them real quick if we use High Tops here. I'll just do a dash without them. We go about that far. I'll do dash with them. Go about that far. You go a little bit further. It's definitely like not bad. We can see these got nerfed a little bit in this next build, 5% less on the dash speed. But I don't think they're as crazy as on other hunters. I think she's going to do really well with the Bloodlust boots because of how much she wants to kind of play around her rock walls and she's kind of skirmishing with her autos. I think she's really going to benefit from the stacking move speed and being able to use that stacking move speed while she's kind of, you know, autoing around and using it to get in range and angles for punches. You know, she has a lot of like angles she can look for. So the faster you can kind of move and find those angles, the better off you're going to be. And I think the Bloodlust boots are really going to enable that once you get them stacked up, especially. So my kind of top picks, what I think is going to be really strong and what I'm going to be running right away is probably going to be this setup right here. I think this one's going to be very strong. This is basically full ability haste with time staff and Chrono Gauge. And then we get the burn on all of our fireballs from the Burning Palm. And then we're getting the crazy cooldowns resetting from hitting autos with our Songbow, and we're getting the stacking move speed with the Bloodlust boots. I think if you're going to move away from the cooldown reduction, it might make sense to just move all the way away, drop time staff for Essence Reaver, drop Chrono Gauge for Frozen Palm. And this one, you're going to have a little less uptime on your abilities. However, not only are you going to light them on fire when you connect this fireball, you're also going to slow them for 30 seconds, making it easier to hit another one or easier to hit engage. And in between that, when you're weaving autos, you're going to be proccing your Essence Reaver, which is healing you, damaging them, and granting you permanent max health scaling. And so this would be basically more like Skirmisher Tetra. You're going to get a little beefier. You're going to have this really oppressive slow on your fireballs, and you're going to be leaning more into kind of like a little more of the auto skirmish type. And then the one with the time staff and the Chrono Gauge would be more for like full ability haste cooldown reduction, where you're just essentially looking to do your stuff kind of as fast as possible. You still have the really strong burn of Burning Palm. You're just dropping the slow and you're dropping the health scaling and the extra little health burn and heal that Essence Reaver grabs. I think this one's super cool though, and I think both of these are going to be really fun in their own way. Boom. That is everything I have been able to figure out about Tetra so far. I hope that was useful for you. I hope that is enough to get you started slamming people and blasting on Tetra. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to probably be playing a lot of Tetra, especially in these first couple days on stream. So if you want to come out, say what's up, hang out, ask any questions, just see some more Tetra gameplay, you can find me live at twitch.tv/Zikrik, and that's with a 0 in the middle instead of an O, because someone took my name. With that, I just want to thank you so much for watching. I want to remind you to take care of yourself and keep vibing. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.